8:54. Good morning, Monday. Latin and Island of the Weather Service said, yeah, it's going to be a little rainy, cloudy this week, but majority will be sunshine, okay? Good morning, 8:55. Senator Joanne Brown joins us in the K-Wave News Link Zoom room. Well, first of all, happy Mother's Day, Senator.
Well, thanks, Chris, and certainly happy Mother's Day, too, to all the mothers out there on Guam that, keep us going. I'll tell you, you don't really appreciate how much your mom does for you till you get older and you become a mom yourself and you realize, wow, your job is never, ever done. So, all the women out there definitely, and some of the fathers out there sometimes that are mothers, too, and raising their children. It's wonderful to have a special day to celebrate some very special people, probably the very core of our existence, definitely our mothers out there.
Yeah, so doing it in one day, though, I don't know. Maybe if I had a friend down in the legislature, Mother's Week, kind of thinking of
make
maybe,
it all year long.
maybe a measure could be introduced.
Hug your mom and tell her you love her today and every day.
Amen to that. All kidding aside, when we talk about introducing measures, you have introduced one here as I got the release over the weekend. Senator Joanne Brown strengthens the Office of Public Accountability to root out corruption and waste within government. We're talking about Bill 302, and just if you could expand on the headline of this release, Senator, just how does this bill, or how will this bill strengthen the OPA and root out corruption and waste within the government of Guam?
Well, primarily the bill would give the public auditor autonomy, is what originally was envisioned when the position was created, and certainly having their own budget. Which was the original creation of the public auditor's office. And as time went on, of course, that appropriation got whittled down and more direct appropriation from the legislature rather than setting a percentage that would be determined every year. It also allows the Attorney General, it also allows the public auditor to work with the Attorney General's office to actually fund the hiring of an Assistant Attorney General, because certainly I'm sure one of the challenges the AG's office has is having enough attorneys out there to do the type of work that's needed. And because of other demands, you very rarely see a lot of effort being put into government investigations. And certainly, my 33 going on 34 years in government, I know it's going on, and so do a lot of other people that work in the government of Guam know it's going on. And I think we need to ensure that our government is free of corruption. Certainly one of the ways to do that is not just have the public auditor provide his reports in government agencies that he does every year, but you've noticed, Chris, and I'm sure you've read some of these audit reports where you see that there's questionable actions that are occurring that need further investigation. And we want to get to the next step, to have the public auditor literally be able to work hand in hand with the Attorney General and have the resource available, funded out of his office, to hire not just an attorney, but support staff to also include an investigator, so that they can actually take it to the level. And we just don't have these reports that we look at and we're shocked by it. And then, it goes back on the shelf and it doesn't go anywhere from there. And I think in order to ensure that government officials are compliant with the laws and making sure they're walking a straight line, I think if they know that, oh my goodness, if I don't, it's a real possibility here, I'm going to get investigated, possibility I might get prosecuted, then maybe I just go down that road. So we would like to see a more active engagement, I think, by supporting the public auditor in having those tools available at his disposal when he determines there's a need to do so. Then we can actually see something more happen as a result of these audits. There might be just minor errors. There might be compliance issue a department or agency needs to correct, and there's nothing, malicious intended with that. And certainly in those cases, those are things that can be easily corrected. But when you're talking about some serious abuse in government, and certainly we've seen it, then the public auditor will have that ability available in that partnership directly with the Attorney General's office, having the finances to do it. Be able to pursue it further. The other thing the bill also does is it allows the public auditor to have the funds allocated directly to his office from the respective autonomous agencies, so that it's a public auditor that is directly paying these third-party auditing firms that are coming in and doing these audit reports. Because right now it's the autonomous agencies that pay them. And certainly, if you ask who's your boss, well, my boss is the person that gives me my paycheck. So we want to make sure that the boss in this case of doing audits becomes a public auditor, and that these companies know that I need to be responsive to the public auditor, because ultimately it's a public auditor that's going to be compensating us for our work. And that gives a little more independence and autonomy to the office versus, when you have an auditor come into your agency for 2 or 3 months, there's a tendency, it's human nature to develop relationships. Right. And that's not at all uncommon. And that's quite normal in most cases. Just hopefully that, they're mindful of how they go about doing their audits. But it's important to have an independent body come into that agency to do a proper assessment and review of the finances and how they're being spent and how they're being accounted for. And if not being properly accounted for, to address whatever corrective action needs to be taken. But having the auditor essentially be that party, that's what we created in the government of Guam. We need to make sure that, ultimately these third-party auditing companies are ultimately answerable to the public auditor and not to the autonomous agency for which they've been assigned and who currently, compensates them for their services.
Senator, I want to just go back because I've had the public auditor on a bunch of times, and every time he comes out with an audit, I feel like him and the staff and the third-party auditors, they work very hard, obviously, to release these audits, and they walk them all the way to our elected leaders' doorsteps. And sometimes it's a little anticlimactic because what ends up happening is instead of you would kind of assume that the AG would, just be all over these findings, but that hasn't been the case. And a lot of times it's taken, senators writing multiple letters to the Attorney General just to get a follow-up on some of these audit findings. And so when I've had the public auditor on, it's clear that he's been frustrated by the work that they do, right? And they do the work, and I mean, it's pretty much done for everybody, but we just don't see that follow through. And is that kind of obviously what prompted this measure?
Well, certainly that's part of it. I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense. We invest all this time and effort and money into doing audits because we want to make sure that the government's operating fiscally responsible. I mean, we're now closer to $1 billion budget in terms of our operations and money that's paid for by the ratepayers and taxpayers of Guam. We should have a mechanism directly in place so that the public auditor just doesn't have frustration. And we're mutually frustrated. I mean, we're legislators. The fact that we have to shepherd this process through or be persistent with the Attorney General's office to write letters and say, hey, are you following up on this? Are you investigating? Are you doing something with this? That really should not be the case. And, normally they'll come back, oh, we don't have enough resources. We've got all these other, crimes in the community. But crimes against our people also happen when there's misspending of public money. And that's not uncommon in the government. You like to think, oh, a minor little thing here or there, but that's not necessarily the case. Certainly has not been my experience. And in my experience, it goes into the millions of dollars of public officials misusing their position and their authority in the playoffs and the political playoffs that happen in this government that the people of Guam pay for. And that should never be the case. So certainly when the public auditor comes up with questionable findings within a government agency and he may determine there's something a little more serious that requires investigation or criminal in nature, then by all means, the public auditor should have that resource available to have those questions investigated, have an investigator available to go assist and do that investigation. So there really should never be a reason or excuse that the Attorney General's office can have in saying, oh, I don't have the resources, especially if the public auditor is funding the Assistant Attorney General, and that will allow more direct connection and more direct access for that attorney, or down the road, if there's a need for attorneys to assist in facilitating these cases. And by all means, and to me, that's money well spent. I mean, Chris, I'm not an advocate of just raising money and spending money for the heck of it. Yeah. I am very critical sometimes of my colleagues that just by the millions of dollars, we want to keep raising and growing the size of government. But when it comes to dealing with accountability of close to $1 billion of the people's money, by all means, yes, that's an area that I would be an advocate of supporting and providing more finance resources to, so that we can ensure, not just talk about it, because everybody talks about it. You're going to hear in the next few months in this election an awful lot of talk about accountability and,
you don't say.
But
you serious?
But when you get right down to the brass tacks, it doesn't happen. And I think strengthening the office of the OPA will help facilitate that. And certainly right now it's BJ, but certainly any future auditor that is elected that's accountable to the people, because he or she will be directly elected by the people. They have their clear mandate and they will have the resources available to do their job. So at the end, there should be no excuse.
I want to read this quote before we let you go from the release. Okay. This is a quote from Senator Brown's release. When you push on these empires that have been created within government agencies, you'll get an equal and opposite reaction by some people who are none too happy about what you're doing to deter instances of corruption. Persistence is required. Good laws, sound leadership, and a public will that is intolerant of government corruption is necessary. I wanted to ask about support for this measure Kind of why I read that quote. You talk about pushback from some people who are going to be none too happy about what you're doing to deter instances of corruption. So a measure like this, I mean, Senator, it seems pretty cut and dry, right? We all know, we follow the news with the audits that come out and, what happens after the audits come out. So it does seem pretty cut and dry, but what do you make of the support this measure is going to
Well,
get?
I think we need to be persistent. Certainly, I will continue to do so. If you recall, Chris, last year I introduced a bill on official misconduct, and it hasn't gotten out of committee. That hearing was held in February of last year. And something like that you think would be cut and dried in this current legislature, under this current leadership, has yet to see the light of day. But I'll tell you, I'm going to continue to push. I'm going to continue to be persistent. I mean, I didn't run to come back to the legislature just to take up space and have my title back. I mean, I came back specifically for these key issues, and I'm going to continue to advocate. I'm going to continue to push for it. I'm going to continue to be vocal about it until this legislation gets in place.
Thank you, Senator, for your time this morning. And again, happy Mother's Day and have a great week.
Well, thank you. And thanks so much for having the opportunity to talk with you, Chris. Always appreciate it. Thank you.
We're getting the public
Bye-bye.
auditor on tomorrow if you want to keep score tomorrow morning.
Well, I'll definitely listen in.
Thank you.
I certainly will want to hear what BJ has to say, but thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator. We'll see you. Senator Joanne Brown, Republican. Let's end with Cover Me, shall we, please? Which one are we going to do here, sir? Cover Me. I want to do Hagu na Palawan from Bob Kenga, this one. Hagu na Palawan, Husin Guaida. That one? Yes, sir. You got it. Cover Me is brought to you by Docomo Pacific.